Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies. Today we are doing a review of the very first Goosebumps movie that came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And it stars Jack Black.
Ugh.
Which, I like Jack Black.
Not in this movie.
He has plays a weird, he's supposed to be playing R.L. Stine, but R.L. Stine has a very calm voice, very, thoughtful. I've talked to him, so I know. And Jack Black sounds like he's stilted and nervous. I don't know what he was trying to do.
Well, he's a lot like that one English teacher that you really don't like. Like that English teacher who's really uptight and just kind of mean and unfriendly, but at the same time he's really into writing and books. His character's just trash. But we should start off by saying that we saw this movie in theaters
Long time ago,
and that was a big mistake on my part, because I thought we were going to go see a Goosebumps movie. I didn't know we were going to go see Shit Bumps, the YA Goosebumps version with Hallmark movie, love story, and fucking Jack Black not being R.L. Stine. I thought we were going to see a Goosebumps movie, and we didn't get to see that. And after the movie, Safi, what happened? Let's just go through the experience.
I don't remember
because
we didn't like it.
Well, no, you liked it.
It was okay. I thought at the time it was okay. We were not reviewing movies back then.
That doesn't matter.
I just watched a movie for entertainment. It was not
And this
Goosebumps.
movie's not entertaining either.
It wasn't Goosebumps.
No, it wasn't.
They kind of showed a little bit of the characters and the Pasadena monster from Pasadena, and that praying mantis one that isn't even in that book. Sorry. The lawn gnomes. So they showed Slappy, but he wasn't really Slappy. He was like an updated, younger version.
Yeah, like a babyish version
Which
for kids who can't handle Goosebumps.
Well, but the problem is the kids in the book are high schoolers. Again.
You mean in the movie?
I guess when they start making these new Goosebumps editions, it's about high school kids, which I thought that's what Fear Street was supposed to be.
It is, and it makes no sense because Goosebumps, it's always supposed to be 12-year-old kids. They couldn't handle doing that because they think that they're better than R.L. Stine and Goosebumps, so they want to do what they want to do. And they want to make shit. And so after we saw this movie, I don't know why Safi never went through this, but after we saw the movie, I was extremely pissed off. And it's probably, as Safi would agree, it was the angriest that I had ever been after seeing a movie in theaters. Ever, was watching this movie. And she remembers, Safi, right? Go through it.
I don't remember, and you go through it.
You go through it.
You
do remember that I was pissed off, though, right?
Yeah, you were not happy.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details, but I do remember you weren't very happy at all.
And I just ranted and raved, and she kept on saying, Marco, it's just a movie. It's good. It's pretty good. I liked it. I kind of liked it. That's what she was.
The operative word was kind of.
I kind of liked it.
Well, I like Jack Black. I hate criticizing him negatively because I like him. He's been good in other stuff. Well,
yeah.
I actually haven't seen that many. I've seen some kind of Christmas movie with him.
He's always good.
I've seen the thing, Power of Rock, or whatever.
Oh, God. Safi, let's just...
Anyway,
you like him,
I've
though.
liked him in other things.
But let's be honest. Now, let's get into the movie, because we have established that when we saw it in 2015, I hated it, and I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. Definitely not Goosebumps. Definitely not my Goosebumps, at least. This is like the modern pussified Goosebumps, but it's even more pussified than the modern Goosebumps books. Like, you really have to be just the biggest baby in the universe to be afraid of this movie. It's a stupid comedy. It's the worst. This is one of the worst movies ever made, because it took everything that made Goosebumps unique and got rid of it. The fact that it's a book series for kids that's actually scary and actually makes kids afraid and actually is like a horror series, completely taken away. It's like a comedy Hallmark movie type of thing. It's a lot like the Spirit Halloween movie, which Safi never saw. I had the unfortunate time of watching that movie. It's a lot like that, where you can't take anything seriously. And then, what else makes Goosebumps unique, Safi?
Well, it's scary.
No, we already talked about that.
I don't know what to tell you. It's for but the thing is.
No, what else though?
It
takes place in Ohio. Now, this movie follows the trend of shitty ass Hollywood movies and shows where we can't have anything actually take place in Ohio. So this movie takes place in Delaware.
Of all places, I mean, I know. Joe Biden is from Delaware.
Who gives a fuck?
He wasn't president then, so I don't even get where they came up with Delaware.
That's Jill's husband. Right, Safi?
Jill's husband.
You get it?
Oh. Yeah.
That's what these writers would say, because they're a bunch of feminazi fucking weirdos.
Yeah, but that was before that even.
Well, anyways.
Delaware. It's also supposed to be for younger kids, and
Well, not really. It's supposed to be for kids, but, it's also supposed to be for, like, early teens. It's not supposed to be for little babies.
Well,
and they made this really babyish.
Why they have to have high school kids? I don't get it.
I don't know.
Because high school kids are watching Friday the 13th.
They're watching
on Elm Street.
American Horror Story.
Halloween.
They were watching Supernatural. They were watching The Walking Dead. They're not watching Goosebumps.
No, they're not.
Especially not when it's like this. When it's the pussified, babyish version of Goosebumps that only the fanboys will pretend is good.
And I remember, too, when we watched it back then, people who were interested in seeing it before anybody saw it were people who had read the books when they were kids.
Yeah, they're all adults.
And they're all at that time, they were all in their, late 20s?
Even the artist
early 30s.
Even the artist who did the artwork for all the old Goosebumps covers, he said that when he saw the Goosebumps movie in theaters, the theater was just full of adults.
Yeah.
And it's like, they don't even care about the adults in the Goosebumps demographic. It's like, you'd think that if you were smart, you would make Goosebumps stories for adults and for children, or maybe ones that are like for both. But instead, they decided to take Goosebumps and let's make the YA babyish version of Goosebumps that nobody wants to watch, except for people who pretend like it's good because they want to be nice and not seem like they're mean.
Well, I just don't know what the audience was supposed to be.
I don't know either.
It doesn't make any sense. At high school, all the kids were high school. I mean, they did the thing. I remember when Marco was in high school at the beginning of the year. They were all in the gym, and then the teachers came out, and the principal, etc. They introduced themselves, and his mom, the main character's mother, the ones who moved to quote Delaware. She had the job of being the assistant or the vice principal or something, and so they showed her talking. So anyway, that's it. That was high school, and 12-year-olds don't go to high school.
Now we should also say I wrote a bunch of notes because watching this movie a second time was torture. Even worse, it was like, watching this movie, I was getting like PTSD flashbacks from watching this in the theaters. And just because I think it's even worse the second time and also, at the time that I saw it in theaters, I hadn't read the books. But once you read the books, it's even worse. Like, then it's like really, really bad. And it's like one of the worst movies ever made. because I've read the books. I know what they're about. I know everything in them. For the most part, I still have some to read. And it's like, this movie does not capture the books at all. And the main character, like, Safi, isn't this like one of the most generic main characters you've ever seen? Like, just this dopey, boring teenage kid who's just like, he's got no personality. He just makes these stupid, sarcastic jokes all the time.
Very sarcastic,
you know,
yes.
Very, very, like, typical main character in a modern movie type of person. And just the worst. He's just the fucking worst. His haircut is generic. He looks like a video game character preset that you choose.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, they don't even use the Goosebumps theme. And even like in...
Or any of the music.
No, and even in Halloween, they changed everything, but they still, in the middle of the music, they had the theme. It was within what they had, put, and it wasn't that great, but you still knew it was a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
And
because you hear the
yeah.
But with Goosebumps, no, we can't have that. We gotta have shitty, babyish, modernized Danny Elfman music that just sounds generic as hell. It sounds just like loud noise.
Well,
it wasn't even music, it was loud noise.
He'd been other stuff, but for this, they should have had the original music.
Yeah.
But they could have framed it with Danny Elfman's music.
No, just don't have crappy music like that. Just have the original music.
That's what makes the show familiar, though. At least to have at least some of it, or just in the middle of it, or something, but nowhere. And the only good thing, I guess, Marco talked about the artist being in the theater, the person who did the covers. At the very end of the movie, I was looking for a post-credit scene because I missed one from another movie we watched recently, and I thought maybe I better, on all the movies from now on, I better watch the post-credits in case there's a scene. And they showed all the covers, but they were blown up, and the real covers of the real, actual, original books. And they had kind of animated them a little bit, not a lot, but it was nice. I mean, they were beautiful. It just shows how nice they were. And then it's so funny because the movie is nothing like the original books at all. It's some kind of made-up mishmash of whatever. But then at the end of it, and with no original music, of course, but at the end of it, they have the original covers. Not of all the monsters, but for instance, that monster from Pasadena. So I like that because they are good.
Well, that's not part of the actual movie,
though.
No,
that's not. It was in the post credits.
It was in the credits.
So anyway, go on. You want to start with the movie? Or
well, the music was very generic, and the music in the original series was actually scary as well. Like a lot of people, they pretend like the original series isn't good for some reason now. Like they pretend like, oh well, it's just not good because it's cheesy and it's 90s.
Yeah,
but even though
I've actually seen that, it's cheesy.
Even though it was quote unquote cheesy, it was still actually scary, and it was still actually truthful to the books. And it was still actually a really good show. And there were very few instances where I watch it now and I'm like, oh, that doesn't hold up. Like most of the time, I really enjoy watching those episodes now, even as an adult. And I can't imagine ever watching this movie again.
No.
Ever.
I won't watch it either.
There were lots of jokes at the beginning about twerking, too. And so
God.
This movie was very dated, and it's like, this movie's about Goosebumps, and you have jokes about twerking. That's kind of bizarre. That doesn't fit in at all.
Yeah, and it's passe now.
Speak up, Safi. Nobody can hear you.
It's passe now. It's outdated.
Yeah.
Nobody even says that or does that.
No. Well, gross women on TikTok do, like Lexi from Chucky, but normal women, they don't. And also, I will say though, it was true to the times, because like in our school, we had the reason why I stopped going to pep rallies and started skipping so that I wouldn't go to pep rallies is because we went to one, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you that the entire dance team did a twerking dance for the whole school.
Oh my God.
That's what they did. Yeah, and it's like, that's really disgusting and just bizarre, like, that they would be doing that. Like, just, ew.
Ew.
And so, like, that's why the pep rallies, they were really that bad and cringeworthy, but there was no reason to have that in a Goosebumps movie. That was totally like, okay, let's not make jokes about twerking. Like, seriously? Like, that's the best you can do? Twerking? This is what...
The people what happens is the main character's mom, she said something about that. I don't know what it was. And when she made the, quote, joke, nobody in the audience laughed, and her son was embarrassed.
Well, yeah, they acted like it wasn't funny, but they were also treating it like it was funny. So it's like...
The writers were, but the kids in the audience weren't. They didn't think it was funny.
Yeah, but the writers thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Safi.
And it was probably, I know it's a room full of extras and actors, and I don't think they had to act very hard to think it wasn't funny. In other words, it wasn't funny.
No.
So, that's just a little thing, but it's just like, we're just talking about a specific thing that actually dates the movie, and it doesn't have anything to do with the original Goosebumps, because there wasn't anything like that back then.
And I will say, I did really like the mom, because she's always really good in anything that she's in. And then I like the love interest. So those were like the only two actors in the movie that I liked. I hated everyone else. Literally, like, everyone else I hated. Especially Champ.
Oh,
the nerdy stereotype from the fucking 90s. Like, nobody wants to see that. Like, ew. And also, this movie is kind of like an agenda movie too, because almost every family in this movie is like a single parent family. And so that was also like an agenda from Sony, is like, it's a modern movie, so every family has to be a single family, because we can't promote normal families anymore. We have to promote single parent families.
Which, whatever.
Safi, speak up, because nobody can hear you.
I know what to say. That it just gets old.
So it's like, ew. Like, really? Like, the old Goosebumps books, they rarely had single families. Like, when they did, that was always when the parents were the worst, actually. Like, in The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena, he's one of the worst parents of the whole series, and he was one of the few, like, single parents. And it's almost like, there was a little thing with that, but...
I don't think it even matters, because I remember the parents as always, for the most part, being weak.
Well, at least they're a normal family,
I don't know what a normal family. I don't think you should
parents.
say that. Okay,
two parents.
Okay, well,
that's a normal family.
The way it used to be average family. Okay.
Well, let's not make it an agenda now, where since it's modern, it has to have a single parent family.
Right. Just because it's modern, they didn't have to make everybody a single parent. Well, we find out later in the movie about Jack Black as a parent.
That's even worse, because like,
say anything.
Oh, we'll get into that.
I've forgotten about that too.
I didn't.
So.
And R.L. Stine in this movie, he doesn't act like R.L. Stine at all. And
no, not at all. Like I said, I've met him, and I could see the way he acted. He was very pleasant, quiet, thoughtful.
But to be fair,
nice.
He probably couldn't be like how he was in real life in the movie. Like, I understand that. And so, like, I understand that Jack Black couldn't really be the real R.L. Stine, but at the same time, he could have at least been a better character than this. Like, the character that he played in this movie was such a huge joke, and he was such a caricature, that it was really, really hard to like this character. Like, even though it's Jack Black, I think that this is probably the worst performance of his that I've ever seen, because it feels like he's not going all in because he can't, because it's for babies, you know, it's a little babyish movie, but at the same time he's also like trying to do something, and I hate it. I hate what he did in this movie. I hate this character. Do you?
Well, it was very weird too, because at the beginning, when the boy and his mom moved to town, all he's doing is, the boy is they have a trailer full of their stuff. They had lived in an apartment, and he was just bringing the boxes in the house. And one of the boxes fell apart, and the girl from next door, R.L. Stine's quote daughter, she calls out to him, and he walks over there, and he was just moving. He wasn't doing anything except doing what he was asked to do by his mom. And plus he wanted to fix his room up, because he had to go to school the next day. And the father comes out, R.L. Stine. He's really mean and hateful,
yeah,
and awful. I've never even seen Jack Black play a part like that, and that's why I said he seems so uptight and stressed out.
But not real. He doesn't seem like a real person, and that's like my biggest issue. Is like he seems like a caricature.
Yeah, I don't know. He just was very unpleasant, and it was a little ways into the movie before he actually became a little bit more of a quote person. I
don't think he ever became a person, actually.
The whole time he was just like, he wasn't. He just, I don't know. I don't know what he was trying to be.
And we love Jack Black. Like, anything he's in, really, we'll watch for the most part.
He's a good actor. And I remember when this came out, I think I saw him on a talk show or something, and he was really excited about playing it, because I guess his stepfather is like a math teacher, and he had an appreciation for teachers and R.L. Stine, and he was really excited about doing the part.
Yeah, and I really feel like if it had a better script, and if it had people who actually liked Goosebumps and didn't think that they were better than R.L. Stine, I think that he could have been a lot better, because as I said, worst performance of his career for sure. And we should also talk about, they have this stupid abandoned theme park, and so there's this stupid love story with the boring character and then the nice girl, and she takes him to this theme park, and it was almost like a shitty excuse for not having Horrorland in the movie. It was like, we don't have Horrorland, but we have this abandoned theme park where all the lights still work for no reason.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Even the merry-go-round, everything works. They all work, apparently, even though it was shut down.
They didn't have enough money to keep it going.
How does that make any sense, Safi?
I have no idea. I mean, that's happened the turn of the century. They had a lot of these, like, not as advanced, but they had all these, like, carnival areas, like in Kansas City. They had them, and they shut them down, and so they had the remnants, but they didn't. I mean, this thing was like it was built yesterday. All the lights, every single light. It was tons of lights and rides and a big sign, and they all worked perfectly.
And I really feel like the biggest problem with this movie is that when they wanted to make the movie, they didn't say, like, let's make a Goosebumps movie. They said, let's make a YA movie and use this property that we own to make that. Like, nothing about this movie felt like Goosebumps at all. Nothing at all. Safi, would you agree?
Yeah. And should we tell, like, the main premise of the story, which is pretty easy?
Go ahead.
Well, the father of R.L. Stine and the daughter, he is really, like I said, he's really mean. And he starts yelling at her, and and I think she screamed or something. And so the boy next door calls the cops. And the cops are just like, they are the worst. They're jokes.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is that this movie is yet again another horror movie where you have the dumb cop cliche.
That's not good.
No.
That is not good.
And these cops were, like, extra dumb. And so R.L. Stine says, like, I have a big surround sound system. I'm a bit of an audiophile. And then the female cop is like, oh, what a file! And she took out her gun like she's going to shoot him because she thought that he said he's a pedophile. And it's like, but even if he said he's a pedophile, it's like, how would that give you the right to shoot him or even aim your gun at him?
Why would you be withdrawing your gun from your holster?
I don't know.
I just didn't get that.
She's like Barney Fife, but trash. And so I hated the cops in this movie, too. Like, that was another note that I made, was like, these cops just suck.
So he goes in there, and then everything manages to turn on the boy like he did something wrong. Even his mother's like, why did you do that? And then they said something like he needs to go get mental health counseling because he called the cops.
Yeah.
I mean, I really didn't like that. And then he hears something bad happen again, and he decides he's going to call this nerdy friend.
Champ,
yeah. And I think at school they call him Chump or Chomp, or they don't call him by his name.
Well, his character sucks. Like, he's probably one of the worst characters I've ever seen in a movie or show.
And it's the night of the school dance. It's when everything begins. And, of course, R.L. Stine has written all these books. And they're looking for, I guess the boy he called, he pretended like he was the cops and called R.L. Stine and said, you need to go to the station to answer some questions or something. So he left the house. So these two went in there and looking for the girl. And they find all the books. But they're just in like leather covers and they're all locked up. I mean, every book he's ever written.
They also find the cuckoo clock. Yeah. And I felt like this movie is very similar to the shitty show where everything evil all came from this house, which I should point out that the same pieces of shit who made the show also made these movies. So that is why...
the show that's on now.
Yeah, so that is why the movies suck and the show sucks, because they decided to let these people ruin Goosebumps 3 times. What?
So
you think that's funny?
But the thing with these books, though, they're locked. Every single one of them. They have a keyhole on them. And then over on an adjoining table, there's a key on a little string. And the guy, the champ, whatever his name is, picks out the book, the Pasadena Monster one, and says, oh, wow, this used to scare me, blah, blah, blah. And the other boy's not really familiar with the books.
Well, and here's where we get to one of the worst lines of the movie. The abominable snowman of Pasadena, after reading that, I stopped visiting my grandmother in Pasadena. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense at all, because if you actually read the book, you would know that the abominable snowman, the way that the book ends is that he runs away from Pasadena because it's too hot, and he needs to be in a cool environment. So it makes no fucking sense that after you read The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena, you wouldn't want to go to Pasadena again. And it's like the people who made this movie, that joke, you'd have to make that joke based on the title, and if you actually didn't read the book. But
right.
if you read the book, you would know.
Right.
So that's another thing. There you go. What do you think of that, Safi?
Well, I don't think the kid, if you want to know the truth, I don't think the actors have read the books either.
I don't either.
I just got, because I think that I think it would have been different. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just didn't feel like they'd even read the books either. So if you have a joke like that, it would go over like a lead balloon. And it really did anyway. It just was stupid. So the other kid says, "Oh, if you like it so much, here, I'll get this key and I'll unlock it for you, and you can look at it or something." And so he unlocked it, and then all hell breaks loose after that. And the girl shows up and said, "What? Did you just unlock this book?" And then the monster, there's a big light, and the Pasadena monster comes out of the book, and starts wrecking everything. And it's big. It's as big as the room. It leaves the house, and the girl's running after it with the book. And then it goes from there. And that's actually the night of the dance too. There's supposed to be like an opening or a school dance.
And the CGI is terrible too. And this is another thing. Like, they could have used the effects team that did the original series, because it's a very popular Canadian effects company. They still have all the original props and effects for the Goosebumps show. But no, instead of doing that, it has to be like modern movies. So it had to be computer generated monsters that look like trash.
Yeah.
Especially the blob. At the end, they have this big CGI blob, and it actually looks worse than the blob that they had in the original show that was also not good. What?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, you did.
I did?
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
Well, it looked worse. It looked really bad, but it didn't look as bad as the CGI blob in this movie.
So, from then on, it's all hell breaks loose. And of course, Slappy somehow escapes, and he has the lawn gnomes unlock all the books. And all the monsters escaped, and they're all mad at R.L. Stine for keeping them imprisoned in the books, because he comes back, and of course now he's got to round them all up, and he can't even do that. He admits it, that he can't do that because there's too many. He even forgets about some of them, and so they go all over town, and they've got the monster who freezes people, and they go to the cops. They freeze all the cops.
That doesn't exist.
I was gonna say.
So
what book was that?
A lot of the monsters in this book are monsters that the people that made this movie created, because they think they're better than R.L. Stine. So, they didn't want to feature the monsters that people wanted to see. They wanted to feature their own creations that suck. And another terrible line was, "I read what the abominable snowman did to Pasadena. It's no joke, man." It literally didn't do anything to Pasadena at all. It ran around Pasadena and destroyed a couple things, but it didn't do jack shit to Pasadena. So it's like they have no idea what happened in that book, the writers of this movie. And then also, R.L. Stine says at one point, "Why didn't you pick Little House of Hamsters to open?" And, well, because shitty-ass writers. That book doesn't exist. The closest thing to that would be Monster Blood 2, and you wouldn't want to open up that book because at the end, the Cuddles becomes a huge hamster. He turns giant like Godzilla. So you wouldn't want to open that book. But of course, they didn't read the book, so they don't really care. They looked at the covers and said, "We can turn this into a really big thing for us."
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
So the whole movie is like running away from these monsters. They go to the high school dance, and all the kids, they have to warn them, and they have to barricade all the doors, and like I said, they froze the cops. The werewolf, for some reason, went to the grocery store, because they were at the grocery store, and they finally, and it just looks terrible. And R.L. Stine, what they all decide to do, they said, well, because he says he can't. There's no way he can stop these things. There's just too many, and too many books. So they said, well, you wrote books to bring them to life. And they want to know, oh yeah, why did he write these books? And I guess, what was it? He was unhappy.
I was lonely because I had allergies and I had to stay inside, and so I wanted to terrorize the town, and none of this actually makes any sense at all. Because how did the monsters come to life? Oh, we're not going to explain that because we're just making a children's movie and children suck. So we're going to treat them like idiots.
And so, anyway, I actually read his autobiography.
Is that true? Well,
no.
you said that he stayed inside a lot or something.
I don't remember that, but I don't remember him being bullied or unhappy with other children or anything that I just think that's what he liked to do.
Yeah.
He just liked to write about monsters.
And Slappy is also voiced by Jack Black, and which is strange, and he looks terrible.
I forgot about that.
He looks like a babyish, modernized version of Slappy. He's not scary at all.
And of course, he's directing all the bad things too.
This is the worst. This Slappy is worse than the Slappy in the audiobooks. You know, the flamboyant gay Slappy. This Slappy is the worst Slappy ever. Like, because he's not Slappy at all. And once again, Safi, what is it? It's all about Slappy. Because he's the leader.
That's right.
So once again.
He's directing everything.
Wow.
And so what it's figured out to be is Jack Black, since he wrote R.L. Stine, he wrote all the books to bring the monsters to life, he would have to write a book that would put them all back in a book.
But he can only use his typewriter, which is currently being used at school for a play version of The Shining, which would never happen, unfortunately. And the excuse that he gives is, my typewriter has a soul of its own. It's like, what the fuck? How is that? Like, and you know what, Safi? It's very similar to the haunted scrapbook in The Shitty Show. You know, where you can write stuff in the haunted scrapbook and it comes true. So it's almost like, you know, they're just kind of copying themselves because they suck so badly at writing. And it makes no sense, too. My typewriter has a soul of its own. That's
from that, actually, another, that book series where they have that story where the typewriter thing he writes comes to life. Remember that? Creature, or what was that? I can't remember.
Oh, the blob that ate everyone. In the blob that ate everyone, he thinks that the typewriter is doing the creating, but it turns out that it's actually him that has the power, and so he doesn't need the typewriter. So even if you're trying to copy that, you're a failure. What? You're like...
So he starts typing the story out of at the school while everybody's going insane because these monsters are trying to break into the school. And of course they have to run away from the school carrying the typewriter, and they end up in the theme park where he has to finish the story, and then the blob, which was just CGI, so he has to pretend to struggle against a fake blob.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And I didn't get it. I thought he had to, but I guess it doesn't matter as long as you use the same typewriter. The boy next door, they're on top of the Ferris wheel. Like I said, all the rides work. And he finishes the story. And then, but also, I forgot to mention that it ends up to be that the girl, the daughter, is not real. That he just made her up. She's a ghost.
Yeah, so basically...
And they see that. All of them know that. The boy and his friend.
The people who made this movie are saying that R.L. Stine is not able to naturally make children. He's not able to physically, so he had to create a daughter of his own, like Pinocchio.
And I'll tell you something, that's just bullshit, and I know that.
Because he has children.
He had a son.
And he has a wife, too.
Yeah, and she's his editor.
They wanted to make him a single parent so that they could have that little agenda. And then, of course, they have this ugly fat aunt in the movie. She's the sister of the main mom. And, of course, because R.L. Stine is overweight in this movie, he has to end up with the ugly fat aunt that nobody likes. And so that's another thing that they do to kind of shit on R.L. Stine. He has to end up with the ugly fat aunt.
I don't think she's like that.
Yeah, she was.
Out.
Yeah, she was. Why couldn't they give him a 10?
Oh my god.
What? It's like what they do. This is what they do all the time in movies nowadays. They have these overweight characters, and because they're overweight, they have to end up with a fat, ugly woman too. And it's like she was the worst character in the movie. Honestly, like her character sucked. She was like an SNL skit character, and I thought there was no reason for him to have to be with her. Like just like why does he have to suffer? Like Safi.
Marco.
What? You didn't think she was ugly and fat?
No.
She was.
Marco.
Why didn't he get a love interest that looked like the main love interest? Like, well, obviously of legal age, but like, you know? Why not?
How about the mother of the boy?
Yeah, why not her?
I thought that's what it would be, because I didn't remember all the details of the movie.
Why not?
I don't know.
No, why couldn't he end up with her?
No, Marco. I didn't write the damn movie.
Because Sony has agendas.
So the thing is, he wrote something that made her as a daughter, and so she's got to go back in that book too, and so it's a sad goodbye, and because the girl has to go in the book with all the monsters, the book that puts them away.
And it's like, oh, we're never going to get to see her again, wink, wink. And it's very similar to in Amazing Spider-Man, where he promises that he's not going to date the daughter at the end, and then at the very ending scene, Spider-Man is like, that's the fun thing about promises, is that you don't really have to keep them or something. Like, you didn't get to see that yet, Safi, but at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man, he promises the dad of the daughter as he's dying that he will not date his daughter and endanger her. And then at the ending scene is them sitting in a classroom, and he's like, that's the fun thing about promises. You don't really have to keep them. And so he dates her even after promising the dying dad that he wouldn't. And so it's very similar in this movie where, another Sony movie where the daughter, she is put back into the books, and it's like, oh, this is so sad. Not really, because I'm a grown-up. And then at the end, it's like, oh, well, R.L. Stine actually decided to write another book and put her back in real life because apparently his you-know-what doesn't work. Right, Safi? That's what the writers are saying. Because why else would he be making a fake kid? Because he only has to date ugly fat women and he doesn't want to? But he does want to. He wants that woman's number. So, this is terrible. I hate it. Right, Safi? Do you hate it?
Marco.
Isn't that insulting? Wouldn't that be the most insulting thing? If they made a movie about you and they said, oh, well, you had to create a child of your own because you can't physically have children. That's terrible.
Well, I know, but
unless it's true.
Happen.
Well, it didn't happen with R.L. Stine, obviously.
No, it didn't happen with R.L. Stine.
He could make children perfectly.
Yeah.
As we see.
In fact, he used his son. He'd float these ideas about these monsters. He had a son to give feedback back then because he was, the kid's probably 34, 35 years old now, and that's how old these books are. And anyway, so he did have an actual kid who gave him feedback if he wanted it and if the kid wanted to give it. And at least he would know what he liked and didn't like and what would appeal to him, hopefully appeal to him. And because that's another thing, you have to know your audience. And that's the bad thing about this movie. It's actually they're breaking tons of cardinal rules about writing. They don't know their audience because they don't know what their audience is supposed to be. They're just making up some kind of figment of a, Marco says YK or
YA.
YA.
It's a genre where it's for tweens.
But they,
You know, like you always have to have a stupid love story. You have to, and they sucked out all the color from the movie too.
well, I know I had trouble seeing, seeing the stuff, the video. So anyway, it's not a good movie.
And my last note that I wrote is that the shitty writers, they actually came up with 2 Goosebumps book titles that R.L. Stine said in the, because there's lots of like really self-congratulatory jokes in this movie. Like there's a couple of times where they compare R.L. Stine to Stephen King. Like they say, stop trying to be Stephen King, and it's like, well, wait a second. Stephen King doesn't write books for children the last time I checked, so...
There was a big thing back then. I remember that, though. And they did talk about this, like they had articles about it, and how, I think like when the movie came out especially, about that R.L. Stine had written more books than Stephen King.
And he sells more copies, which they make...
Yeah.
They make 2 self-congratulatory jokes about writing the most books and selling the most copies. It's like, this movie's really bad. But they came up with 2 titles, and one of them was Slappy's Revenge. And R.L. Stine then says, that's a really good title, actually. And then at the end of the movie, they came up with a second title for a possible book, The Invisible Boy's Revenge. So it's like these writers suck so badly, they can only come up with one type of title, is a character's revenge.
Yeah.
Or they're making a joke about how R.L. Stine is so lazy he can't come up with good titles, which is false.
Which is not true at all.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
What'd you think of that, Safi? Did you notice that? The only titles they came up with were both the same thing?
I just ignored it. It just BS.
But it's in the movie.
But that would be actually a Slappy World type of book. Slappy's Revenge.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, that would be. And how many have we read so far? 8?
No, I don't know.
Anyway,
15 or something? I don't know.
We just got through reviewing the Slappy World book.
And it wasn't good.
No, but they're really, at least they're aimed for, at least the characters are not high school characters, they're 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it was a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old siblings. And that's actually the way it is with the original Goosebumps. The type of kids who were in it. So, not high school kids. That's Fear Street.
Yeah.
It's a separate series. In fact, if you see the covers for Fear Street, which I know they've screwed that up, but the original covers, they look like high school novels.
Yeah, and they look pretty good.
I've seen them. And we got a couple of them that nobody in the house is really interested in reading those.
Well, I would be interested, but there's so many Goosebumps books to read that it's like, when would I ever get to Fear Street?
I know. And Marco, I know, would like to read. We had those Give Yourself Goosebumps series where you read the book and there's about 20 different endings.
Those really are not good because they're really like letdowns.
Well, you read quite a few of them. We got quite a few of those, and I don't think my other son liked them as much as the books.
Well, because it's like there should be like a fun element where there's strategy, but it really feels just more like he's trying to force you to do certain things, and it's not really that good. But I did want to do it as a kid because it seemed like a great idea as a kid.
Yeah, and he's not, it's just because they're kids' books. So anyway, I mean, you have to want to read. If you're an adult and you have a kid's book, you have to want to read. I like reading kids' books, but, not every single one, and I have I want to see how the illustrations, etc. But anyway, back to our review. So anyway, we both agreed it wasn't a very good movie at all.
No, it was terrible. And all the people who are pretending like it is need to stop pretending right now.
Because I'd like to ask them, really, do you want to go see that movie? Do you want to see that movie again?
It's always the same excuse. It's fun! It's fun! The movie's fun, so that means it's good. It's fun! It's a kid's movie. It's Goosebumps, so, it doesn't really have to be quality. It's fun. It's like
There's other kids' movies that are fun and are better made.
Yeah, like Willy Wonka and Peanut Butter Solution.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I actually liked both of the Willy Wonka movies. They were very different from each other, but I still liked them both. I know some people don't like Johnny Depp's version, but I did. I liked it.
It's a guilty pleasure movie.
Yeah, so anyway, my review of it is just like a Wendy's single burger, which is no good, and it really not. I don't like fast food burgers like that, like McDonald's burger, Wendy's burger. They're very thin and they're just like tasteless compared to a homemade hamburger. And it's a single, it's square. It's kind of like a pot holder. That's what it reminds me of. Like, you remember making these pot holders? You have these loops and you put them on a loom and you weave them. I don't know if anybody's done that for a long time, but they're square. You always, you make them for your parents or something for a present. Million years ago, but they still had those in the later years to make things with these loops. That's what they were. They were looked like a huge rubber band, only they were made of cloth, and you would string them together to make a pot holder, and they're square because the loom is square, and that's what the hamburgers are like, and they're tasteless, and you might as well be eating a pot holder.
Ew.
That's what my food review is of this Goosebumps movie. How about you?
Well, I would give it a review that is very dated as well. And so what happened in middle school was that it really felt like the food options were terrible, just like everything else about that school. Ankeny Middle School. Horrible, horrible place.
Yeah.
It should be shut down and destroyed forever. Like your mom. And
I didn't like
the lunches. The lunches were so bad that like I stopped eating lunch at school because I'd rather sit there and starve and eat lunch after school than eat the shit that they were serving. And so one of the lunches that they supposedly said like this is a lunch for a kid. One of the lunches was a pretzel. So like a frozen pretzel that you would get like at a football game or a baseball game, and you'd have a pretzel with a fruit cup and milk. That would be your meal at school. Like, that's enough food apparently and enough nutrition and everything to satisfy a kid, a growing like teenager. And so obviously that's a terrible meal, and it's not really a good meal for a teenager at all. I mean, there were so many instances, too, like in middle school and high school, where everybody would be hungry in class. Like, there would be all these teachers who would purposefully have, like, food because they knew that the students would be hungry because they didn't eat jack shit for lunch. Like, the football players, they would be eating stuff because, they didn't have anything at lunch because the food sucked and they hardly got anything.
And they had practice right after school, so...
Yeah. And so I really felt like the worst lunch was that pretzel lunch. Like, how would you even think that a pretzel could be a satisfying school lunch for a kid? Safi? I mean, is that a lunch?
I know, but I remember this was an issue back then, too.
Yeah.
Everybody was complaining about the lunches, and they would be starving by the time school got out.
a lot of and a lot of it was also Michelle Obama's fault, by the way.
Marco, cut it out.
She really ruined.
I don't want to get on that.
She really ruined school lunches.
Okay, let's not do that.
And so they thought at this time, after she did her little stupid campaign, they thought that serving a frozen pretzel was a healthy thing to do for lunch.
Well, I don't think she would like that.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she'd be like, oh, well, it's a school lunch, so who cares?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
No.
What would she want to serve me? Like a bunch of vegetables that suck?
I don't know, Marco, but I don't think she would think
was
a good lunch.
I want my cheese-filled breadsticks, my fucking traveling tacos, my fucking foot-long hot dogs, and that's that.
Stop.
That's
swearing.
that, Safi. I want my fucking foot-long hot dogs and my fucking cheese-filled breadsticks now.
Oh, God.
But instead, we got served frozen pretzels for lunch.
Yeah. So anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and become one of our subscribers. So you can tell us what you thought about this movie, and also we will be doing a review of the second movie that came out.
Yeah.
I have to find it though. This one was on Netflix.
They heard our criticisms for the first movie that it was really babyish, and they said, you know what? Let's make the second movie even more babyish.
I don't know. I never saw the second movie, so this will be the first time I've ever seen it. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.